I received the divorce papers via email while I was still in the desert. 13 years of marriage concluded in a PDF attachment. My name is Nathan, a 42-year-old staff sergeant with the 82nd Airborne. I'd been in Kandahar for 4 months when Becky decided she was finished waiting. The subject line read, "Let's be adults about this." The message itself was just 3 sentences long. She had already filed the paperwork, emptied our joint account, and moved her new boyfriend Jeremy into our house in Spokane. I read the email twice, closed my laptop, took a shower in the communal stall, got dressed for my shift, and said nothing to anyone. When I returned to my bunk that night, I replied with one word: understood. That was it. No argument, no begging, no threats. My bunkmate Wilson noticed I seemed off. "You good, man?" he asked, not looking up from his book. "Yeah," I replied. "Just some stuff back home." He nodded, and that was the end of it. Military guys know when to leave things be. Honestly, I wasn't surprised. 6 months before deployment, things had shifted. Small things. Becky stopped asking about my day, began working late at the dental office where she answered phones, and started hitting the gym 3 times a week, though she never seemed to break a sweat. New clothes, new friends I never met. New passwords on her phone. I didn't confront her or check her messages. That's not who I am, but I wasn't oblivious either. So I made some quiet moves of my own. Nothing dramatic, just precautions. I secured important documents in a storage unit across town. My birth certificate, marriage license, and house deed in my name, thanks to the VA loan. I moved my grandfather's watch and my mom's old silver there as well. I also opened a separate account at a different bank and started diverting part of my salary. They're not enough for her to notice, but enough to ensure I wouldn't start from zero if things went poorly. The night before I deployed, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her eyes were dry, as if she were saying goodbye to a coworker rather than a husband heading to war. I should have known then, but part of me still hoped I was wrong. I wasn't. What she didn't know was that I had prepared for this moment. What she didn't understand was that while I don't start fights, I do finish them. I met Becky at a friend's barbecue in 2010. I was home between tours, staying with my buddy Jason in Spokane. She was finishing nursing school but ended up working admin at a dental practice instead. Less stress, she said. We married 8 months later. Becky used to say she was proud of my service, though she never fully understood it. Her dad was a bank manager, her brother a pharmacist, no military in her family. She'd ask when I was going to get a real job, not realizing that after 15 years, the Army was my career. It's not just a job I was biding time at. We bought our house in 2014, nothing fancy, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, and a quiet neighborhood. My name was the only one on the mortgage since the VA loan was in my name, but I added her to the deed because that's what married people do, share things. My dad died a year after we got married from a heart attack while shoveling snow. My mom passed 3 years later from lung cancer, despite never having smoked. They left me some money, not a fortune, but enough for Becky and me to pay off our student loans and still have a cushion. I deployed 4 times during our marriage, twice to Iraq. Each time I returned, Becky seemed a little more distant, a little more restless, as if she were playing a role she had outgrown. I didn't sign up to be a military wife, she told me once after I mentioned possibly re-upping for another 4 years. I'm tired of being alone all the time. I understood that, but the Army was the only place I ever felt I truly belonged. I was good at my job and people depended on me. In 2019, things began to change. Small stuff at first. Becky grew irritated. When I called during her girls' nights, started talking about how her friend Melissa had divorced her husband and was living her best life now. She made comments about how we didn't seem to have much in common anymore. I suggested counseling, but she said we were fine, just going through a phase. Then came the late nights at work, weekends away with friends I had never met. It's the new clothes and the gym membership she rarely used. I should have confronted her, but that's not how I handle things. Never have. My dad taught me to think. Before I speak, to be sure, before I act. So I watched and prepared quietly because my gut was telling me something was coming. In this life, you learn to trust your gut. 2 weeks after receiving the divorce email, I was sitting in the mess hall when my phone buzzed with a notification from our bank app. Another withdrawal at $8,500. It's almost everything left. Set my fork down and opened the app. The joint account balance was down to $22.37. Our savings of $47,000, built up over the years, was entirely gone. Transferred to an account I didn't recognize. Murphy, one of the guys from my unit, glanced over. Bad news? I locked my phone. Nah, just some account stuff. That night I called our bank from the base phone center. It turned out Becky had been moving money for weeks, small amounts at first, then larger ones. The big transfers began the day after I deployed. I hung up and stood in the hallway for a long time, watching guys laughing, calling their kids, their wives, their parents' normal life happening all around me, while mine was burning down. That's when Wilson found me. I heard from Alvarez that, "You look like you'd seen a ghost at dinner," he said. "What's up?" I don't usually share personal stuff, but Wilson had pulled me out of a bad situation in Kandahar once, so I trusted him. "My wife emptied our accounts and moved her boyfriend into our house," I said. "Sent divorce papers while I was on patrol. Last week, Wilson didn't give me the usual, 'I'm sorry,' or 'that's rough,' or 'you'll find someone better.' He just asked, 'What's your plan?' 'Not sure yet,' I replied. He nodded. 'Let me know if you need anything.' That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my laptop and logged into our home security system, something Becky probably forgot. Could access remotely. The cameras showed a strange truck in our driveway, a man I'd never seen before walking our dog, using my coffee mug, wearing my Seahawks sweatshirt, and there was Becky, laughing in the kitchen I had renovated myself. During my last leave, something shifted inside me, not anger exactly, but something colder, clearer. I closed the laptop and pulled out my phone, making a list. Call James, my Army buddy, who became a lawyer. Check the VA loan terms. Contact my master sergeant about emergency leave. Review home refinance documents, something Becky mentioned. Casually last year, checked the security on my military pension accounts. I didn't feel sad anymore, not even angry. I felt focused, like I was planning a mission. This wasn't about emotion. This was about strategy at 0500, before my shift started. Sent an email to James with the subject line, "Need, legal help discreet and urgent." His reply came an hour later, "Call me secure line only." When I hung up from that call, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't need to yell or threaten. I just needed to wait and watch, letting her own actions become the trap. 2 months later, I was back on American soil. I didn't tell Becky I was coming home, didn't call, didn't text. I just checked into a motel in downtown Spokane under a different name and contacted James. We met at a diner 10 miles outside of town. "You look like hell," he said, sliding into the booth. "I like it too," I replied. James handed me a folder with everything we discussed, house deed, loan documents, bank statements. Then he pulled out a separate paper. Found something interesting. "When I was digging into your finances, it was a refinance application with my signature on a Texcept. It wasn't my signature. Someone had tried to copy it but missed details. The middle initial was wrong, and the stroke pattern wasn't mine." "Becky did this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. James nodded. 3 months ago, used the equity to pull out $330,000. Your signature is required for that, since the VA loan is in your name only. She forged my signature, took out a loan against our house, then cleared out our accounts and divorced me," I said. "Busy woman, it gets better," James said. "She listed her boyfriend as a co-applicant. He's got a record 2 DUIs and a fraud charge from 2019. I took a deep breath. What are my options? Several, James said. Offer first. You need to. Decide what you want. I thought about it. I want what's legally mine, and I want her to understand consequences. Then here's what we do. The next day, I drove past our house. Her boyfriend's truck was gone, but Becky's car was in the driveway. I parked down the street and watched for a while, thinking about knocking on the door, confronting her. But that wasn't the plan. Instead, I drove to the bank, met with the loan officer who processed the refinance, showed him my military ID, my real signature on my driver's license, and the forged documents. His face went pale. "I'll need to report this immediately." "I understand," I said. "I've already filed a police report." That night I got a text from Becky. "Who have you been talking to at the bank?" Jeremy said someone was asking questions. I didn't respond. The next day, I went to the county clerk's office, filed paperwork contesting the refinance due to fraud, and registered formal notice that no changes to the property could be made without my presence. 2 days later, Becky called. I let it go to voicemail. "Nathan, we need to talk." The bank called about the house. "What are you doing?" "This is about the divorce. We can discuss it like adults." "Like adults?" Same words from her email. I still didn't respond. James called that afternoon. They froze the refinance money and there's more. "Your wife's boyfriend has been driving your truck, the one in your name?" "Yeah, he got pulled over this morning, driving on a suspended license from those DUIs. They impounded the vehicle." "Good," I said. "He also had some interesting things in the truck prescription pads from the dental office where Becky works." They weren't blank. I closed my eyes. "She's been stealing prescription pads?" "Looks that way." "The police are investigating." I hung up and sat on the edge of the motel bed. This was getting bigger than I'd expected. Part of me wanted to call Becky, warn her of old habits. But then I remembered the security camera footage, my house, my dog, my life given away like it meant nothing. This was the path now. Couldn't turn back, and honestly, I didn't want to. I met with the bank fraud investigator the next morning. His name was Thompson, a short guy with tired eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. "This happens more often than you'd think," he said, spreading documents across his desk. "Spouse deploys, other spouse sees an opportunity. What happens now?" I asked. "We've frozen the funds from the fraudulent refinance, but there's a problem. Some of the money's already gone." "How much?" "About half, $14,600. I leaned forward. "Where did it go?" Thompson hesitated. "I'm not supposed to share that information. It's my house, my name, forged my money." He nodded slowly, then turned his computer screen toward me. "These are the transfers out of the refinance account." I scanned the list. Multiple transfers to someone named Daniel Spencer, not Jeremy, someone else I'd never heard of. "Who's Daniel Spencer?" I asked. Thompson shrugged. "Not my department, but you should ask your lawyer to subpoena these records." I called James as soon as I left the bank. "Daniel Spencer," he repeated. "Let me run a check." An hour later, he called back. "Got it. Daniel Spencer is a real estate agent who specializes in quick sales cash deals." "She was planning to sell our house," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "Looks that way. The deposits were probably earnest money to get him moving on a listing." But here's where it gets interesting. Spencer has done business with Jeremy Ryan before. Jeremy Ryan is her boyfriend, right? Yes. They've closed 3 deals together in the past 2 years. I sat down on a park bench, trying to process this. So this wasn't just Becky leaving me for some guy. This was a planned operation. "Maybe," James said carefully. I did some digging into Jeremy Ryan. He has a pattern, gets involved with women going through divorce or with deployed spouses. 3 cases I've found so far. Each time the woman's home gets sold well below market value to one of Spencer's clients. Ryan gets a cut, then he moves on. And Becky? She knew about this. Hard to say. Maybe she's a victim too, or maybe she's in on it. I rubbed my face. This wasn't just about Becky betraying me anymore. This was something bigger, something calculated. Other military families had been victims. "What do we do?" I asked. "I've already contacted the FBI's Financial Crime Division," James said. "This crosses state lines, involves military personnel, and VA loans they're interested." That night, I sat in my motel room with a beer, thinking about everything. Wondering if Becky had been playing me our entire marriage or if she'd gotten swept up in Jeremy's scheme. Wondering if it even mattered. My phone buzzed. Another text from Becky. "Nathan, please call me. The bank is saying something about fraud and Jeremy got arrested for driving your truck. I don't understand what's happening." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, "Who is Daniel Spencer?" 3 dots appeared as she started typing, then stopped. Started again, then stopped. Finally she wrote, I don't know what you're talking about. 14,600, I replied. Multiple transfers. House listing. No response for 10 minutes. Then she wrote, "It's not what you think." I turned off my phone and went to bed. The next morning, James called. "The FBI wants to meet. They've been investigating Ryan and Spencer for months. You're not the first, but you might be the case that breaks it open." For the first time since getting that divorce email, I felt something close to satisfaction, not because my marriage was over, but because the truth was finally coming out. I met with the FBI agents at their field office and spoke to Agent Patel and Agent Donovan. They recorded my statement and took copies of all the documents James and I had gathered. "Your case helps establish a pattern," Agent Patel explained. "Shows intent. Organization makes it a conspiracy rather than isolated incidents." "What about Becky?" I asked. "My wife, ex-wife." The agents exchanged looks. "We're still determining her level of involvement," Donovan said carefully. "Did she ever mention financial difficulties? Pressure to sell the house?" I thought back. She kept saying we were house poor, that we should downsize. I didn't see the need. Our mortgage. Payments were manageable on my salary. Patel made a note. When did that start? About 6 months ago. Around the time she must have met Jeremy. And the refinance. Never discussed it with me. She forged my signature while I was deployed. They asked more questions. Took more notes. When we finished, Patel handed me her card. "We'll be in touch. In the meantime, don't confront your wife, Ryan. We need to build this case carefully." I nodded. Understanding, that evening, I drove to our neighborhood again, parked down the street from our house. Jeremy's truck was back. Becky's car was gone. My phone buzzed. Text from Becky. "We need to talk in person. Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow." I showed the text to James over breakfast the next day. "Don't go," he advised. "Nothing good can come from talking to her right now." "I won't," I said. "But I want to know what she's doing today while she thinks I'm meeting her." We drove to our house at 9:30 a.m., parked across the street. At 9:45, Becky came out, got in her car, and drove away toward Riverfront Park. "Now what?" James asked. "Now we wait," I said. 20 minutes later, a car pulled up, real estate agent logo on the door. Daniel Spencer. Jeremy came out to greet him. They talked in the driveway, then went inside. "Should we follow them?" James asked. I shook my head. "No need. I installed security cameras last year, and exterior. They upload to cloud storage." James smiled. "You didn't mention that before?" "Never came up," I said, pulling out my phone. I opened the security app and angled the screen so James could see. Spencer and Jeremy were in our living room. Spencer was taking photos. Jeremy was pointing out features of the house. I turned up the volume. "Should list by the end of the week," Spencer was saying. "We've got a buyer interested already, cash offer as usual." "How much?" Jeremy asked. 420? "We list at 470. They offer 420. Everybody's happy." "What about the husband?" Becky says. "He's causing trouble." Spencer waved dismissively. "Military guys are all the same. They make noise, but they've got deployments, responsibilities. He'll take a settlement to make it go away." I turned to James. "You getting this?" He was already recording the feed on his phone. Every word I forwarded to Agent Patel with a short message. Happening now. 30 minutes later, our house was surrounded by FBI vehicles. I watched from down the street as agents led Spencer and Jeremy out in handcuffs. My phone rang. Agent Patel. "Got them on tape discussing the fraud scheme," she said. "Plus conspiracy, wire fraud, and attempting to sell property under false pretenses. We're going to need a formal statement from you." "Of course," I said. "Tss. And Mr. Briggs, your wife just arrived at the scene." Please subscribe for part 2.